Alright, what is good, ladies and gentlemen? It is the Master Reviewer back again with another review, and today we are doing a review for Phineas and Ferb, the movie Across the Second Dimension. Yeah, that is the name. It's been a few days since I think by now the Phineas and Ferb review released on the channel, and I did take like a few days to kind of, I don't know why, to be honest, I just did not initially watch the movies. After I finished the series, I decided to take a bit of a breather because the show does get pretty repetitive. But yeah, today I watched the first movie, which it was like a pseudo rewatch for me. I do remember I watched it many years ago with a friend of mine. Yeah, I did not like it. I remembered most of what happened, but there were like specific details here and there. I guess I forgot. But yeah, so this is a pseudo rewatch for me. It is in preparation for a viewer recommendation. And yeah, let us just begin starting off with the plot. So the plot is that basically, as usual, you have Phineas and Ferb. The beginning of the movie kind of starts out as a normal episode of Phineas and Ferb, but then Doofenshmirtz, he plans to make another dimension inator to basically travel to another dimension. I don't remember the exact reason why he said he was going to do it. Probably just for an evil, I don't know, it's an evil plan, take over another dimension, something like that. But Phineas and Ferb ending up in Doofenshmirtz's lair, and so when Perry arrives to thwart Doofenshmirtz, he cannot directly stop him because Phineas and Ferb are there. So Phineas and Ferb actually end up helping Doofenshmirtz to complete his inator because it doesn't work initially because Doofenshmirtz, the way he is, he rerouted like all the power something to the self-destruct button, so it wasn't working properly. So Phineas and Ferb end up fixing the inator for Doofenshmirtz, which does end up creating the portal to the second dimension. And so from there, Phineas and Ferb, along with Perry, they end up in the second dimension. It's a dimension that Doofenshmirtz rules over. And yeah, this is basically, so Doofenshmirtz rules over this place. Phineas and Ferb, they don't know, the Phineas and Ferb of the second dimension don't know what summer is. The Fireside Girls, along with Isabella, Buford, and Baljeet, they are all part of a resistance led by Candace, who is she's the leader of the resistance. And the movie, it's a pretty short movie, to be honest. It's only an hour, 20 minutes, but it's actually a bit less than an hour, 20 minutes, but basically the film is that at first, Phineas and Ferb, they need to rescue Perry because the Doofenshmirtz of the second dimension basically said that he will let the Phineas and Ferb of the first dimension, he won't like try to capture them if Perry just lets himself get captured, and so Perry lets himself get captured, but then the second dimension Doofenshmirtz realizes that he needs the first dimension, it's getting confusing with the names, but he needs the first dimension Phineas and Ferb in order to complete the inator that the first dimension Doofenshmirtz made in order for it, like he wants to now take over the first dimension tri-state area. So he ends up, so what happens is that now the first and second dimension Doofenshmirtz are using Perry as baits. The first and second dimension Phineas and Ferb, along with the resistance, they end up going to save Perry. I think Candace, along the way, she ends up returning to the Candace of the first dimension ends up in the second dimension as well, and so now they are going to save Perry. They manage to save Perry, but in the process, like they manage to get to Perry, but then Doofenshmirtz from the second dimension, like both the Doofenshmirtz at this point, they're still working together. Later on, the second dimension Doofenshmirtz betrays the first dimension Doofenshmirtz. So you have all the characters are now running away they have Perry. They're trying to get away from the Normbots, which are like much more intimidating and evil in this second dimension. So the second dimension, Candace, she has to make a choice in order to not betray, but like she has to choose between either risking everyone getting away or guaranteeing that she along with her brothers will get away. So she chooses to guarantee that her brothers, the second dimension Phineas and Ferb, are safe and manage to get away. But in the process, the first dimension, Phineas, Ferb, and Candace, along with Perry, they end up getting captured. And so, yeah, then eventually there's a sequence. They're about to get eaten by this thing called the Gumiz, something like that. I don't remember the exact name of it. But at this point, also, the second dimension Doofenshmirtz, he got tired of the antics of the first dimension Doofenshmirtz, so he also like sends him to get eaten, basically. So they're all about to die at the hands of this creature. They're also surrounded by a pit of lava, so they're about to die basically. But then I think Perry uses one of his devices to get a key, manages to free them. Well, doesn't manage to free them actually. At this point, the second dimension Candace shows up and helps them escape, and they manage to. I think at this point they fixed the other dimension like earlier in the film. I think they managed it. That's how Candace, I think, actually made the first dimension. Candace made it to the second dimension. They fixed the other dimension inator, and then they made it to so yeah, so it works now. And then there was this like whole thing with, I think the second dimension Baljeet said that basically how it works is that the dimensions work in like a clock way, where there's Phineas and Ferb's dimension, and then the next one would be the second dimension. So it goes clockwise. I don't really know. I'm not good with optical stuff, so I don't know if the way I'm seeing it on the screen, it looks clockwise, but I do know that I think when in the recording it gets flipped, I'm pretty sure, so maybe I should be doing it this way. But anyway, it goes clockwise, basically, the dimensions. So they went from the first dimension to the second dimension. In order to go from the second dimension to the first dimension, they would need an incredible amount of power. Actually, no, okay, so it wasn't that they fixed the innate, so I'm not sure how they fixed their miniature dimension travel device thing, because I'm pretty sure that the way that Candace initially made it to the second dimension was that they got a bunch of power and then used it to get to the first dimension, but then they weren't going to leave yet because they wanted to go save Perry. So that's how the first dimension Candace made it to the second dimension. Anyway, so they end up just going through all the other dimensions to get back to the first dimension, and so that eventually ends up happening. But at this point, also the second dimension Doofenshmirtz managed to get the other dimensionator to work, and so he makes it to the first dimension, and then he brings all his Normbots with him to take over, and then this leads into the final confrontation of the film, where I think, so the Normbots are taking over and stuff. Phineas and Ferb, Perry goes to fight the Normbots. Phineas and Ferb, they end up going back to their house. They end up finding Perry's secret hideout, and then they end up getting a message, basically, from Perry saying that this is the most unbelievable thing that honestly this show has done up until this point. Phineas and Ferb rebuild every single invention that they built in over the course of the entire summer that this show takes place in. Every single invention they rebuild in the span of 5 minutes. So yeah, this leads into the final confrontation, where Phineas, Ferb, a bunch of their friends and stuff, they are controlling inventions that Phineas and Ferb built throughout the course of the summer to fight the Normbots, and then it leads to Phineas in a direct 1v1 with the second dimension Doofenshmirtz. The fight goes on, stuff happens. Perry the Platypus fights the alternate dimension Perry the Platypus. Yeah, what happens at the end? Eventually, the second dimension Doofenshmirtz is about to defeat the first dimension Phineas, Ferb, and Perry, but then the first dimension Doofenshmirtz shows up and then basically says, here's your... There was it was mentioned that the tragic backstory of the second dimension Doofenshmirtz was that he lost a choo-choo train, so the first dimension Doofenshmirtz just gives him his choo-choo train that he didn't lose, and so that just solves the issue, and so yeah, the second dimension Doofenshmirtz is just no longer evil now. And so he goes back to the second dimension where he gets arrested for his crimes against humanity. That's what they call it. So that is okay. And then from this point, Phineas, Ferb, and the rest of them, they all have to lose their memory, thanks to, I think they mentioned that Doofenshmirtz, he built an amnesia-inator in the past. He says, I don't think I built that because I would have remembered it. So anyway, they use this device in order to make everyone forget about Perry, because they can't have, they're not allowed to remember Perry if he is going to continue being a secret agent, and so everyone loses their memory. And for some reason, Stacy's there, but I'm pretty sure at this point in the show, it's they establish that Stacy knows that Perry is a secret agent, and they just allow her to know. So maybe at this point, they were okay, you two also have to lose your memory, or maybe just off-screen, she left from when everyone lost their memory, so she still remembers. So not sure what's going on with that, but yeah, and then that is where the film ends. So then I think, I don't remember the exact final scene, but everyone loses their memory, and I think, I'm trying to remember exactly what the final scene was, because it's kind of annoying me now that I can't remember, so give me a second here. Right, so I think what happens is that we don't actually see the rest of them, but Perry, we do, the final scene is Perry goes to his lair where he uploads photos of the day that they just had. So yeah, that is where the film ends. So overall, the plot, I'm going to give the plot, I would say, between a 3 to a 4 out of 5. I would say that it was I'll be generous. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I would say I like the plot. I thought it was pretty good. Having this is, I think, the first time probably canonically that Phineas and Ferb, they end up interacting with Doofenshmirtz, and so I think it's interesting where it's they end up helping Doofenshmirtz to complete his invention, and Perry can't do anything to stop it, and then it leads to them entering this alternate dimension of Doofenshmirtz taking over, I would say. So I like the plot. I would say it was a 4 to 5. In terms of the characters, there are no new characters, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure every character is just simply all the quote-unquote new characters that there are just different versions of already pre-existing characters, just like Candace from the second dimension, Phineas and Ferb from the second dimension, Perry from the second dimension, Doofenshmirtz, like everyone is just a version of an already existing character from the second dimension. I would say it's cool though. I do like to see like different versions of these characters. That's always kind of cool having. It's not like different timeline shenanigans, but different dimension shenanigans. That is pretty cool. Multiversal variants. That is, pretty interesting, I would say. And I would give the characters, I would say probably I'll go with 7 out of 10. I'll say pretty good characters. Again, seeing just different versions of characters in this other universe, I would say is good. And the characters themselves, like the regular ones, we see Phineas acting pretty angry, which that's a pretty rare sight to see Phineas expressing a different emotion other than his usual, just, I don't know, laid back kind of non-worried attitude, I guess. So we do see Phineas like actually get angry at Perry, which I thought was pretty interesting to see. So yeah, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10 for the characters. In terms of the settings is basically just the regular Danville areas, but this time we also have the second dimension with Doofenshmirtz, which it looks fine. It just looks very much more Neo, I would say, like very much more futuristic. But yeah, besides that, it doesn't really, I don't know, nothing like too amazing or anything like that. I'll go like a 6 out of 10 for the settings. I don't really care for them too much, but they're fine. They still work about as well as they did in the show, I would say. In terms of the visuals I would say are, again, like similar to my review of the show. These visuals are not really some of my favorite. The proportions of the characters, like heads and stuff, they are not really. It's not my favorite artistic. I don't know, the direction, I guess, doesn't really work the best for me, I would say. The visuals, they were fine. The action sequences, I guess, they all looked. We'll get to that in a second with the action, but the visuals, I'm just going to go like we'll go like a 5.5 to a 6, and I'm going to be harsh about it. I'm just going to give it a 5.5. I'd say it's decent, nothing too amazing or anything like that. In terms of the action, this film definitely does have some action. A lot of cool sequences actually with Candace. Candace like has probably the best action in the film besides her. I didn't really care for a lot of the Perry fight sequences, to be honest. It felt like something we've already seen before, but with Candace fighting, it actually felt like something new, something fresh. Like because up until this point we have not seen Candace fight. I technically already saw, because I'm reviewing these movies after I finished the entire series, and there was an episode where it was called like Tales from the Second Dimension. So I did see, I think in that episode I did see Candace fight, but this is like canonically the first time Candace is fighting, so I do think that it looks pretty cool. I would say I would give the action probably, it's not like the most amazing or anything. I'll just go like a 5.5 once again for the action. It's decent action. It's not anything like too incredible or anything like that. In terms of the worst thing, I am going to say there was one action sequence, I think, which was the one where they were on like the minecarts and stuff. It felt like it went on too long, to be honest, and it's like all the background of it felt very stale and stuff, and so that scene was probably my least favorite in the movie, I would say. I would give it probably like a 4.5. I didn't think it was that good. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 for that one like chase sequence. It felt like it went on too long, and it felt like very bland kind of. I did like the moment where the second dimension Candace had to choose between saving her brothers or saving like everyone, including the first dimension characters. But besides that one scene, I didn't really like that one chase sequence that much. So I'm going to go a 4.5 for that. In terms of the best thing, I will say that the best thing was probably just like all the stuff that has to do with Doofenshmirtz specifically. Even I'm pretty sure in my review for the show I did say I like the Perry / Doofenshmirtz side of things better. In this movie specifically, it's more so just the Doofenshmirtz aspect of things, because a lot of the Perry stuff is intertwined with the Phineas and Ferb plot, which just, again, I don't like as much as the Perry versus Doofenshmirtz stuff, but in this case, like, it's more just like Doofenshmirtz and Doofenshmirtz with him and his alternate version, I guess. So I'm going to say the Doofenshmirtz stuff, it was very good. I will say 7.5 for Doofenshmirtz. All of the, not as good as like the main series. I think that Doofenshmirtz is still more entertaining in the actual series itself, but I still think that this was probably my favorite part of the movie. Just Doofenshmirtz interacting with himself, or just him being the very great character that he is, I would say. So yeah, 7.5 for that. Any extra notes I did not already mention? I already mentioned everything at this point, so I'm going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. Right, so I'm actually recording this the next day because I did forget to speak about this, and I did want to mention that the music is actually, I would say, my favorite thing from the movie. I really like specifically the 3 tracks, the opening track of the intro track with Perry, the Doofenshmirtz duet. I thought that was probably my favorite song in the entire movie, and the summer song that the first dimension Phineas and Ferb sing to the second dimension Phineas and Ferb. So I would say that actually I probably like the music a bit better than the Doofenshmirtz bits, where the Doofenshmirtz stuff I would give probably a 7.5, but the music itself I would give an 8. So just, yeah, the way it fed, the score ends up coming out to, minding those calculations, it ends up coming out to about a 6.5, which would be good, which I think is probably what I would give the film. I would say it was a good film. These kind of movies, like anytime you have a movie that is a spin-off, not a spin-off necessarily, but a movie related to like an established like already show, whether it's like a show or an anime. In the case of like I guess Konosuba or Cowboy Bebop, I guess in the case of Konosuba, I did actually think that the movie was better than the series itself. So. But yeah, I would say that in most cases, it's not usually going to be better than the series, and it's not in this case, but I would say that it was about as good as the series. I did say in my review for Phineas and Ferb that it feels very formulaic, what the show does, and this definitely is doing something a bit different, which I can appreciate. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give it probably a 6.5. I would say it's good, about the same level as the series itself. If I let it marinate, it's been a day by now, so because I'm recording this the next day, I think maybe it marinates a bit better in my mind, so maybe like between a 6.5 to a 7, so... But I'm going to be a bit harsh. I'm just going to call it a 6.5. I would say it's good. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I will maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it. So let's leave it at that.